Hello, everyone. Welcome to Progressive HR Live. I am here with Karen Weeks, Chief People Officer with OrderGroove, and we're talking about culture trends for 2023 and how Karen, along with OrderGroove, are implementing these trends across the organization. So if you've never watched a Progressive HR Live before, you know this is the time when you go ahead and add your name and where you're streaming from into the comments, and we will say hi. So please do that now. Let us know where you're streaming from and who you are. And I don't know, what's the weather like in your neck of the woods right now? So before we start our questions, I'm going to ask Karen, what can you tell us a little bit briefly about what are your top 3 to 5 culture trends that you think we as HR professionals pay attention to this year?
Of course. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I think when I think about what is coming up in the next few years, honestly, it's a reflection of where we've been and what we've learned. So I keep saying as an HR professional, oh, I've got this, I've seen it all before. And then the world says, nope, here's a new adventure for you. So I know we are all feeling that as HR people. So I think the things that are top of mind for me are one, how are people staying connected? So whether you are totally remote, hybrid, or even if you have gotten back into the office, being connected and building those relationships is very different after the last few years. So, really trying to figure out what that means for your team today and moving into the future. The other one is, and you'll see a theme here, right? Is like authentically, what does this mean for you and for your team? So the second one is around sense of belonging. And I think people are defining this in very different ways depending on their own experiences, what's important to them in their careers. So really identifying what does that mean for your team and how can you support that? The third is really around thinking about mental health, workplace support and environment, and really sort of what is our teams expecting of us to help them through that. You may call it burnout, you may call it just sort of feeling disengaged and disconnected because of the world that we're living in. So, what is mental health and what does your team need there? And then finally, the fourth thing is data. Everything data. So, how do we know that the programs that we're doing support the things? So, if people are looking for more connectivity, if people are looking for a sense of belonging, if people are trying to figure out what they need from a mental health and burnout standpoint, and we do something about it, how do we know it's actually working and what data will show us all of that? So, they're all kind of tied together, but those are the things that I'm seeing my friends talk about, I'm seeing companies try to figure out, and I know we're trying to think about it at OrderGroove.
Thanks so much for that, Karen. Wow, that was a lot to unpack
Yeah.
there. This is so exciting. We're going to be talking about all this information today. So I want to let our audience know that we are closed caption enabled. So if you do not see closed caption and you want to add closed captions, go ahead and it's the lower right-hand corner. You can go ahead and select closed caption on LinkedIn. So we're going to go to our audience now and see who's joining us today. And we've had like a number of people chime in and let us know where they're joining us from. Oh yeah, and give us some likes and some celebrations for the conversation we're having today. And if there's anybody out there that you think would benefit from this conversation, please go ahead and share the link to this live with them. And you can do that now, or you can do that later when the replay plays on LinkedIn. So let's go quickly to our audience. So Ronaldo, hello. I know that when we had to reschedule this live due to some illness, that Ronaldo had messaged me a few times and said, like, when will you be going live? When will you? I'm so excited for this conversation. So I had to say hello to Ronaldo quickly. And then we have Kingsley from San Diego and Susan from South Carolina. And we've got a lot of people here. Patricia from Ann Arbor, and so many more comments coming in. And then who do we have here from Boston? I'm going to quick look up with Jan. Jan Kerr from Boston. Yes. Okay. And then from Montreal, we have Jessica. And I'm going to do say a few more hellos to people, and then we're going to head into our next question. Troy says hello from Raleigh, North Carolina. And we are very international here, and we have Fatim from Oslo, Norway, and said, it's cold outside. What's going on? It's supposed to be spring right now. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So you're in North Carolina, right, Karen?
I am. We moved here about 6 months ago after living in New York for a bunch of years.
And what's the weather like right now? Are you guys feeling the spring, or are you feeling like the kind of winter spring that we are here in Wisconsin?
It's interesting. We were really, really warm in February, like already into the 70s, which I haven't been in North Carolina for a while, but I knew that was warm. And then we dipped down to the 50s in the early part of March, which after being in the Northeast for a long time, I know people are saying, ooh, 50s, poor you. But for down here, that was cold. And now we're starting to get back into the 70s again.
Well, gosh, when it's springtime and 50s here in Wisconsin, we wear shorts and wear short sleeves.
Exactly. Yeah, so I grew
Um,
up in the New England area and I actually came down to school in North Carolina. And so when my mom and I came down to do the spring tour, like junior year, it was 60, something like that. And to us, that was summer. So we were in short sleeves, our little spring dresses, and everybody was still all bundled up.
oh my goodness. And you know, we have to talk about the weather. I'm part English. That's like just part of my DNA is like the weather just like is so interesting to me. Again, being British, I don't know what why that is. Oh, okay. Well, fun times. Let's get into more of our questions here. So, I would like to know how OrderGroove is fostering an inclusive culture. Can you tell me more about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're doing a couple of different things. One thing is, quite honestly, we're using outside experts. So we've brought in a couple of different companies to do some trainings with us, to do some coaching around it. We offer some ongoing coaching for people. And if something in the inclusivity or belonging is important to them, that's something they can work with their coach on or fostering that, especially as a manager. So, one, I truly believe in leveraging experts. So we have brought some folks in to help us with it. And then we also have some grassroots things as well. So whether that is ERGs that have popped up that we want to make sure we support, whether that's a diversity council that we have to share tips and help sponsor book clubs or help with educational pieces and pieces of advocacy for folks. And then we just are honestly really transparent about some of the things that we're working on. You know, we could do better on a hiring standpoint. So, what are some things that we're doing? We have found a couple of job boards, a couple of partners that we can work with for a specific role. We're really trying to open it up to a more diverse talent pool, and we share that with the organization. I think one thing that's really important to me as an HR leader is that we have to be transparent. If there are things we do really well, we should be celebrating that. If we do things that we're not doing so great at, we should talk about that so that the company knows that and the team knows we know this is something we could be working on, but also so that we are creating an environment where we're all growing and learning together. So I think by bringing in some experts, by putting some real focus on it, and then supporting what the team is saying is important to them and providing some education, like I said, very simple things like Slack tips, celebrating different holidays. We're really trying to say, at OrderGroove, it's really important to us that everybody has a sense of belonging and is seen and heard in whatever way that's important to them. And so there's a couple of different ways that we're trying to do it.
I'm getting a little slow on the transitions
Oh, okay.
here.
It's okay.
I don't know why
I
that I
get
don't
it.
know why that is. Usually I'm pretty quick, but yeah. No, but I agree with you is like, I think we should say when we're not doing things maybe as good as we could, because I think that also opens up opportunities for people to have a voice and to again support that inclusivity and that belonging within organizations. So if audience, if you have any questions for Karen or for myself or anything regarding OrderGroove or culture, please go ahead and throw those questions into the comments. This is an interactive session, so I do have pre-prepared questions for Karen, but that doesn't mean that we can take a quick break and head to the audience and answer any of your questions, or raise up any of your comments. So Karen, my next question is, what processes and programs are being used to facilitate flex work and virtual collaboration at OrderGroove? Because it's something really important right now. And I want to bring this up because I was just reading, was it 2 days ago on LinkedIn, the news trends, that the Wisconsin State Journal, Wall Street Journal, keeps poking at us that, remote work and work from home has really had its heyday and it's about to end.
Mhm.
So I really think that's just like clickbait in media, and I really do think the future is flex and remote work. So I want you to talk a little bit about that, if you could, please.
Yeah, it's interesting because it kind of goes back to data. So, in our culture survey, we ask questions actually about sense of belonging that we just talked about. We ask questions about productivity, building relationships, So we're constantly kind of looking into in a remote world. So OrderGroove has decided since June of 2020, because obviously before that we had to, but we decided to stay remote because it was working for us. And so we've now hired across the US. We've hired in Canada. We have some contractors across the world that work with us. So we really wanted to support that remote culture that we had decided to lean into. But you have to continue to evolve with it. So I think, stories that might show up in places like the Wall Street Journal, it's thinking about, great, we're working from home. At first that was a necessity. Then people thought it was exciting and cool and they really appreciated it. For companies that have decided to stay that way, you have to continue to evolve and support your team where they need the support. So what I've seen some companies do, and OrderGroove did for the first time in November of 2022, was we did all still come together. So we came all together in New York City. We had a company-wide offsite. We're about 100 people, so it was relatively easy to do. I don't want to say easy from a logistics standpoint, but there wasn't so many people that it wasn't unfathomable. And people really appreciated it, both from a relationship standpoint, but also to give a chance to meet some of these people in person that they had never met before, spend time with their teams in a non-virtual setting. Some of the other things that we're trying now in the new year is we're going to create regional Slack channels. So, OrderGroove SoCal or OrderGroove Carolinas or whatever the case may be, so that if you're kind of in that area, you can join the Slack channel so that, for down in North Carolina, we've got Raleigh, we've got Winston-Salem, we've got folks down in South Carolina. I know in general that's not totally close, but we're closer than other people. So maybe we can all get together on one of the days that we have an all hands and we can kind of all watch it together from a co-working space or grab a coffee together or just literally work together. So we're hoping those Slack channels can help. Or by the way, if someone happens to be visiting Charlotte or Myrtle Beach, let me know because you see me in the Carolinas channel and we'll grab a drink while you're here. So we're trying to find different ways to bring people together both in person, but also continue to support people virtually as well. And I think it's going to be different for different companies. I talk to my HR friends about this all the time, and different companies are doing different things. So one thing you'll probably hear me say a lot today, because it's like the basis of how I feel about culture, is you have to find the thing that's right for you. So for us, coming together once a year with some regional stuff is right. For other companies, they're coming together once a quarter. For other companies, they've moved to a more specific hybrid model. So based on achieving your goals and the team that you have, what's the right answer for you?
And to that point, I do think, I'm not saying that work from home, work from anywhere, or remote work, flex work is for everybody.
Mhm.
There are going to be some organizations that are RTO. They want people to come back to the office, and that's the feeling of their culture. And then, they just need to be very transparent about that, and they can also hire to that.
Yes.
So, it's not, again, to the Wall Street Journal, talking about like, oh, this era is ended. No, it hasn't. So,
Yeah.
and like what you said, it's like it's different for everybody.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add to that is thinking about, if you do change your model, how to communicate that to your team, because you've probably hired people not in the places that you're now going to have an office. So what does that mean for them? And really kind of thinking through those opportunities. Because I think that's the place where people are getting stuck. I have friends that have companies that are going back to the office, and they're like, but I'm in Ohio and you said that was okay. What does this mean? Am I out of a job? Are you going to support this? And you just mean moving forward? Like, so people are kind of feeling a little stuck in the middle.
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't had that conversation with my team because we plan to be completely fully
Mhm.
remote at all times. Although some of us have met in person, which is great, but it's not a necessity.
Yeah.
So, quick question before we go to two of our audience questions. Just for context here, what is the industry that OrderGroove is in, and how many employees do you guys have?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're in the e-commerce space. We work on relationship commerce, which is subscriptions and other recurring revenue for brands and retailers. So to use one of our newer clients as an example, and I'm a pet parent, if you buy greenies through greenies.com and you want to get them every month or whatever, however often you need to get them based on how many are in the bag, that's OrderGroove's technology running that program for greenies.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I do believe subscriptions are the future.
Yeah. I mean, it's hugely beneficial, especially in uncertain times that you're going to get your diapers, your greenies, your vitamins, your granola bars, like name the thing. Obviously, you can tell what's important to me because those are the things I thought of. But that it's one less friction point in your life. You don't have to worry about, oh, did I pick up the dog food tonight? Oh, I just knew it arrived because I needed it. And for brands and retailers, it's a huge loyalty pull because if I run out, I'm just going to run to whatever's closest. I'm not always going to think to go back to PetSmart because they might be an extra few miles away.
Mm-hmm. If you ask my kids, our subscription would be to Frito-Lay for Doritos. It's like every night when they get home, Mom, can I have Doritos for a snack? And I'm like, oh, but you got to have apples too. So let's go to our audience here. So here is a question from Samita. What are the challenges organizations are facing in getting the OrderGroove or setting the culture in hybrid or fully remote work models? How are companies addressing those?
Yeah, I think personally, some of the challenges that we've seen that we've had to be really purposeful about is the cross functional communication. So, if I'm within the HR team, I feel like I've got what I need from my HR team members, but how am I connecting with finance? How am I connecting with sales? And so, I think it's that cross functional piece that's really, really important. And so, from a relationship standpoint, we've actually done some virtual things where it's small group activities and people get into different virtual rooms so that they are interacting with people cross functionally. We have this app called Donut that randomly assigns people in Slack to different virtual coffees. So that's on the relationship side. And then we've tried to think about different ways people take in information and communicate. So, if depending on the topic, we might talk about it in a team update. We then might also do a brief about it or like a memo about it that we send out. We might do a Slack note about it. We'll send it via email. So we actually end up communicating something 3 or 4 times. So wherever you're sort of getting your information, you've been able to get it. You've also been able to reference it because like if I hear about it on a team update and then I try to remember what that was, having a document might be helpful for me to reference. So those are some of the places where I think that where people have gotten stuck. And at least those are a couple of things we've at least tried to help, especially on the cross-functional piece.
Okay, thanks. And then Troy has a question. He says, how often is often enough to get together in person?
Hmm. Again, it so depends on your company. I think for us, we've been thinking about it on a team standpoint. It's probably going to be a couple of times a year. And then as a company wide, we're going to probably do it once a year. The leadership team also gets together quarterly because we're also doing the board meeting. So even within OrderGroove, it's different answers depending on the team or your role. But I know some companies that are getting together at least regionally once a month. And then as a company, they're doing it twice a year. So it kind of is around what are you trying to get out of being together? I think that's the biggest thing is what is the purpose of being together? If it's just relationship building, maybe it can be shorter stints, but you can do it more often. If it's around strategic planning and productivity and some of those things, maybe that changes that answer.
Thanks for that. And Troy, thanks for asking the question. We do have another question from Susanna, but I wanted to go to one of our pre-prepared questions so we can move through actually, you know what? I'm going to flip this up a little bit because this is the question, a question I want to ask. This is the question I want to ask. Like we want to get to this one. So how will ChatGPT and generative AI impact organizational cultures and or HR operations?
Yeah, it's so funny. My podcast co-host and I were just talking about this, that we're going to do an episode about it when it comes to job descriptions and resumes and cover letters and that kind of stuff. I think like everything, technology can be really helpful as a starting point. So I recently was trying to think about a job description for a role that I wasn't as familiar with. So just for fun, I asked ChatGPT, like, write me a job description for X job title in this city and like this kind of company, and it did decent. Like it definitely was faster than me Googling a bunch of the different job descriptions out there and sort of duct taping them together. And then I just did all the customization myself. So to me, it is why recreate the wheel if you can pull some information to start with. So you're not starting with a blank piece of paper, but then you have to make it customized to you. You have to personalize it. You have to make it authentic. So that's some of the places I actually think could be helpful is I'm trying to write a policy, I'm trying to do a job description, something like that, where it's out there. So have technology help you with it. I think where people might get stuck and it's not going to be helpful is if it's trying to be more creative or more culture based. Um, you know, chat GPT or however you're supposed to like start it. I feel like now, because we talked to all these voice devices, we just assume we're supposed to say something, but type it in.
Mm-hmm.
What does good culture look like? I mean, gosh, that could be a million different things. And so it's going to give you a book report versus what does actual good culture look like. So I think like everything, it's going to be helpful in some places, but if we use it too much, it's going to pull us away from the human experiences that we bring to the table and the teams are looking to us for.
I think that's so I want to ask an audience poll here, and Troy said that's a great question about ChatGPT. I mean, again, everybody's heard of this. Who is using or has used ChatGPT on the audience? Who has the trial for ChatGPT 4? And who is using what is is it Bing that's got the ChatGPT, or is it Google that has Baird?
I honestly don't know. I tried it for the first time this weekend. I'll be honest. It was so timely that we were talking about this question because I literally had this conversation on Friday with my podcast co-host. And so I was playing with it on Saturday.
Well, in all transparency, I've been using ChatGPT for like about 2 months now. And it's limited. And I signed up for the ChatGPT 4 trial, but I didn't get in. So I'm still waiting. I'm on the wait list right now. And then I haven't tried any of the other systems that is generative AI. And I did read the Josh Bersin article yesterday about Beamery having its own generative AI. And I thought that was really, really interesting in talking about how that generative AI can change culture, can support culture. But to your point, it's still pretty young,
Yeah.
and we're not like, you still have to use your human sense and your creativity to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like so many things. At the end of the day, computers can be wicked smart, and we all know that. Like we have seen that in action, but it does not replace the human element to things where we are bringing emotions to it. We're bringing perspective. We're bringing stories. We're able to identify what people need versus like the educational answer or the academic answer. So I think that's the place. And I know there are people who you have content writers and some of that on your team. So um, I teachers are concerned about it from book reports. I know sometimes like we may be concerned that it's going to create some content. So I think just talking to your teams openly about where it could be helpful and where not to leverage it too much. Again, we have adult humans on our teams. Like, let's talk to them about these things and let's ask them. And instead of it having be a topic we are avoiding, let's just talk about it and see how it can help us or not help us.
Right, exactly. So going to the audience here, Megan, she says, I'm on the wait list to try it out. And call out to Megan. Megan's going to be on Progressive HR Live next month. We're going to be talking about HR in the metaverse. We'll probably talk a little bit about ChatGPT too. And then Rick S says, ChatGPT won't replace you, but you'll be replaced by someone that knows how to use it better than you. Absolutely. So yeah, to that point, Rick, if you haven't used ChatGPT, definitely play around with it, monkey around with it. You don't have to like necessarily take it. I don't take it like this is like definitely, it can be, it's not always truthful in the sense of like it doesn't try to disguise truth. It tries to be as transparent as it can be, but it's only, just like any AI, it's only reciting what goes into it. So it's only giving you out what goes in. So, and then we've got a few more comments. Oh, I'm going to apologize for pronouncing. Then Durga says, Karen, which tool is used in ChatGPT for job description?
I think I did it just on like something called open source or something like that. Like it was just a very simple thing. And then I literally typed in job description for X role, and that's what created it. But I didn't, this is where I have not spent enough time in it. So to Rick's point, like I need to educate myself more on this, but I just typed it into sort of the general box that came up.
Yeah. So Rolando has come to our rescue here and he says, here's a
Nice.
link. I agree with Karen. Use ChatGPT as a starting point and then edit and personalize it absolutely with your style. Yes. Yes. So yeah, I mean, and in answering the question as well, like there's so many different tech that is starting to build in use for generative AI and Chat GPT. So originally it was OpenAI that created Chat GPT and they created Chat GPT 4. But then it was either Bing or Google, and I can't. It's a war, so I can't quite remember who it is. Has the Baird, BARD. So Rolando, can you look that up for me and see who is it that has Baird? So I don't feel like I'm like just talking about this randomly and not knowing for sure. Okay, so we're gonna have a few more. I wanted to go back to Susanna and what Susanna had asked.
Yeah.
She says the actual greenies people aren't remote.
Yeah.
In manufacturing, we are all on site. All of these products are made on site. How do we ensure that remote hybrid isn't us and them? And that's a great
Yes.
question.
Yeah, and I realize I come from a place where it's easier to make this decision because I'm in a tech field, and so we all have computers, and we just went home and just stayed home. But I know a lot of people who are in manufacturing or retail or places where, or even think about healthcare workers and teachers, but the hospital admin staff maybe work from home. So I think one thing that Rebecca called out in the comments is really helpful is understanding the value and the reason for who's on site and who's not on site, and that everybody is bringing something really different to the table. I also have known some organizations that said, hey, because some of our team has to be on site once a week, once a month, once something, everybody has to be there because we are a team. And so if we're asking some people to come back, we need everybody to come back at least once in a while. And so I think that it's people feel the us versus them when they don't understand the reasoning, when they feel like there's inequality. So maybe there's a way to recognize those folks that have to be on site because of the job description that they have, and they literally have to tangibly be there. So I think, I know Amazon struggled with this because they have the sort of supply chain people who are literally loading up the trucks and driving the stuff versus the Audible people who maybe didn't have to. So I think really understanding first who's on site and who's not and why, then recognizing the importance of everybody and ways to support each other in those moments if you decide that either hybrid or different roles require different things.
And I think it goes back to it used to be the conversation of blue collar versus white collar, right? And then it was people who are like on the floor in exempt roles versus non-exempt roles. And then it was people who are like during the pandemic. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a divide there, but it was retail and necessity versus everybody who could work from home. So there's always going to be some sort of division, I believe, until we can really 100% utilize AR and VR and holograms. And I see this, maybe like 25 years in the future. But yeah, I think at that point, everybody is going to be exactly in the same spot.
Yeah.
Because we're all going to have the tools.
And I think too, it goes back to valuing what's important to different people. So this was probably 2018, maybe, like it was several years before the pandemic. I was at an HR conference in San Francisco, and every year we would go to a different cool place in San Francisco. And so we went to the Tesla headquarters where they literally made the cars. And the head of HR at the time was talking about how, as different perks they were trying, they removed a lot of the snacks and cereal and that kind of stuff because they just didn't feel like that was the best investment, and they offered like different perks instead. Well, the frontline manufacturing workers that were literally building the cars really got upset about that because for whatever reason, for them, having that free food during their breaks made a huge difference to them. While again, the engineers on the other side of the building could have cared less. And so they had that conversation of what's important to these team members, what is of value to these team members, how can we make these team members' lives better and easier while they work for us? That's going to be different. Even when I worked at Yodel, we went through that. We had a huge call center population and then sort of the product and engineering and corporate teams. And we did different things for those different organizations. As Yodelers, we all went through some things, but then we also recognized that different departments needed different things.
Yes, and that gets to just a quick kind of insertion of a plug for the upcoming webinar that Progressive HR is doing with Club Health. We're going to be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the idea of health, employee wellness and healthcare benefits. How really, we're trying to modernize employee wellness and healthcare. It's really about individualization, and the best way to get the best way to get individualization is through either, help employee wellness subscription services or through employee wellness stipends. So in that way, everyone can pick what it works best for them.
Yeah, I'm so glad you bring that up because one of OrderGroove's values is what you see is what you get and it's all about authenticity. And a few years ago, instead of doing a gym discount or a discount to this thing, we moved to the allowance ideology because that way everybody wants it for something different. Awesome. You use it for what you want to use it for. And that was something that we changed to a couple of years ago. So that's going to be a great webinar. I'm sure people will really appreciate that.
Yeah, everybody, if you're interested in the webinar, go ahead and type in Club Health. Club Health, the page, there's an event page below, and you can go ahead and attend the webinar. So now the webinar is May the 4th, and we're kind of going to get this idea around it. May the wellness be with you. And so like, may the fellas be with you.
Love it.
So you kind of started answering the next question I had for you. And what are the most popular ways companies are promoting work-life balance and employee well-being in 2023 to make their cultures really come to life?
Yeah, I think, again, I said I was going to say this a lot, so I'm going to say it again. It's really about what is right for your team. So at OrderGroove, one thing that we have moved to is we have a platform where everybody has access to a coach. It's for us, it was a good decision from a budget standpoint because it's meant to be for a vast majority of people. And so we moved to this, and they're specifically mental health professionals. They're not therapists, but they are licensed mental health folks that can help with anything from stress and burnout to how to have a difficult conversation to conflict management. And again, kind of going back to it's something for everybody. We specifically picked this platform because it really did allow for a wide range of like, this is what I need help with. So that was a place where we said, look, we know people are going through a lot. We know people have different needs at different times. So yes, we have invested in leadership coaching in some places. Yes, we've invested with this company for this kind of specific training and coaching, but this is something that's kind of for everybody based on your needs. I think more importantly than a thing to give people is you have to train your managers on how to create the space for those conversations. So as part of our manager training, we talk a lot about creating the space and building the trust and having the relationship so that people can say, something, I'm going through a really tough time. I'm really burnt out right now. It may be work related. It may not. When we had an unexpected move and moved down to Charlotte, that was not a situation we were expecting. We were very happy in our apartment, and the guy we were renting his condo, he decided to sell it. And so all of a sudden we had to figure out what we were going to do. That was a time where I was really distracted, and I had to go to my team and say, something, I have to be out unexpectedly on Friday because I have to figure out how to get a mortgage, or, something, I'm going to be on this call this day, but I may be a little distracted because I would have just gotten off the call with whatever. So I think knowing that you've creating the space as a manager to have those conversations, that's when you can then figure out, this is what my team needs. I can be there for them. These are the humans that I'm trying to support. And I know sometimes people who maybe don't believe in that philosophy are like, oh, that's too fluffy. That's too whatever. But something, I was more productive and more engaged once I got through that time because I was given the space.
Yeah, no, and I completely 100% concur, and that's all how I've always gone about, within the HR teams I've worked with and the people I've managed as well. I also think that it's important that managers give the space, but also that we can feel we can ask for the space.
Yeah.
I don't think we modern. Where we are now after the pandemic and everything that's happened, I think we definitely we deserve to be able to ask for that. And I mean, if someone says no, okay, fine, at least you're asking for it. At least you're asking to have this opportunity. And if they say no, then maybe there's a different culture you want to be with
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah. We, on our latest culture survey, we had a lot of conversation around productivity. So we do something called Focus Fridays, which we've been doing for the last few years and really trying to help people protect those days. And then one of the other things that we're talking to our managers about is, so we have flexible PTO, so we don't have like a system that's tracking it, but everybody has team calendars where people are putting their PTO. And so we've told the managers like, hey, go look at your team calendar, find your people. And if people aren't taking PTO, don't say, hey, you should be taking some. Say, hey, how about next Friday you take it off? Or why don't you talk to your partner and find a week over the spring that you can take off? Give them almost the directive to do it so they don't have to ask. But to your point, then also create the space for them to ask and be advocates for yourself when you need to ask. And by the way, as HR people, we have to role model that. I was just on a panel
mhm.
last week about role modeling self-care as HR professionals, because we can say it's really important, but then if we're not doing it or our leaders aren't doing it, our team isn't going to feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah. And I think like Melanie Naranjo, she just had a big post that go viral
Mm.
on LinkedIn about there's no HR for HR. So how are we creating this space for
Yes.
ourselves?
Yes.
Rolando did come to our rescue here, and he said, "I found the link comparing different AI chatbots. There's the link
Love
here."
it.
And then Vanadurga said, "Some tools we need to pay for it, and paid tools. Do we find any difference?" So I can answer this one, and yes, there is a difference between paid tools and non-paid tools. And the main difference I've found is that the paid tools are bringing more current information, and you can access them at busy times. So a lot of times, if you go into ChatGPT, you won't have the ability to actually ask the AI any questions because it's too busy. And they say, we're too busy right now. Go ahead, type in your email address, and we'll send you an email when you can come back online and try. They never send you an email though, so don't. They're just way too busy to send you an email. I've tried many times. But again, going back to this conversation is like, this is ChatGPT is going to be a big thing, and we need to talk about it. Karen and I were emailing back and forth yesterday, and she's like, what did you say about it? Is something that we can't avoid.
Yeah, it's a topic we can't talk, like we have to talk about it. We can't avoid that it exists, and then we can't avoid talking about it.
Exactly. So everyone, we have maybe about 7 more minutes left. So if you have any last minute questions for Karen, please go ahead and add those to the comments. With the time we have left, Karen, you're not just the CPO for OrderGroove, you're also the host of Shine at Work, right?
Yes.
And then you're also an executive coach as well, correct?
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about both of those roles?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started the podcast during the pandemic. So I had started to help people think through what might be next for them. So people that were directly impacted. Actually, Rebecca Taylor was one of the people that was helping sort of create a safe space for HR folks that were impacted to find some help navigating what was going to happen next. And so I kept hearing from folks, which was so inspiring, but also surprising. I don't want to just find another job. I want to find what's right for me. And in
Mhm.
a time when there was huge layoffs and like the world was upside down, I actually thought people were like, I'm scared I'm not going to get a job. I'll just take the first one. And that was not how people were thinking. But what I kept hearing was, but people don't do that. Like people don't change jobs. People don't, do make career pivots. I was like, yes, they do. I did it and tons of other people do it. So the podcast first started as literally sharing stories. You know, I used to be this and now I'm this, and this is what I learned and this is how I did it. And that was literally the podcast. It has sort of turned into more of career development, how to do a job search. My co-host is a former recruiter. And so he and I will talk about sort of what's happening behind the scenes. So candidates, this is what you need to be thinking about, because as HR and recruiting people, this is what we're looking for as we're hiring. So it's kind of morphed into this broader career development podcast. And with that has sparked some conversations that I do, just some coaching on the side with. My belief is I just want to help people be happy at work and shine their brightest when they're doing the thing that means something to them. And so if I can help you do that, I've done that my whole career. It's sort of where I lean in the most at OrderGroove. So if there's a couple of people I can help on the side as well, I would love to do that, because why not be happy at work? Because we all work way too much. So if you're not feeling happy doing it, then that just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. That's why I'm such a proponent for the 4-day work week. And when I say 4-day
Mhm.
work week, I don't mean smashing all the 40 hours during the whole work week into 4 days. So
Yeah.
I actually mean 32 hours.
And,
So
just real quickly, because you
yeah,
mentioned that. So when we implemented Focus Friday, we also had to do a meeting audit, because to your point, we couldn't just push all the meetings to Monday through Thursday, because by the time you'd get to Friday, you'd be so burnt out, it doesn't matter. But it gives people an opportunity to say, okay, if I only have 4 days, these are the meetings I have to attend. This is what I have to do so that on Friday I can use it for whatever I need to use it for.
um, oh, there we go. Okay, so Mandy asks, what platform does Karen use to provide coaching to employees, and how does she create ROI to enable the investment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have partnered with a couple of different organizations over the years. Um, and it's funny because Rebecca's going to yell at me because I can't remember the name of the new company, but it used to be Go Coach. They have rebranded and expanded everything that they do. So we worked with them more on the leadership side. And then the platform that we use for all employees is called Boone Health. And like I said, it's more focused on anything people may need. And so for us, that was really helpful to be able to offer it. And talking about the ROI piece, we were able to prove that is the most used perk that we offer. So the ROI was totally obvious to us. When I think about other things that we've tried, yeah, some people used it, some people didn't like it, whatever. We have continued growing engagement on the coaching platform and seeing time and time again signing up for more coaching sessions. So for us, it really made a lot of sense. And to be fair to Boone, like they're also very affordable for a
Um,
startup like us.
what was the other you said Boone?
Boone Health,
Okay, Boone
Boon.
Health.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And thank you, Rebecca. Go Coach is now Skill Cycle.
Yes. And I think one of my good friends, Andrew Hirschbaum, works
Yes.
still.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
love Andrew.
Yes, yes. Well, ask him how do you got to know Corinne Woodman Hollaback, and he'll
Yeah.
tell you a very wonderful story about how it happened over the pandemic.
Oh my gosh.
Um, so last comment question here before we kind of wrap up. Sumita says, thanks, Karen. If a significant percentage of critical contributors are full-time consultants, how can HR make inclusivity of those managerial support of the wellness policies to bridge full-time employees and consultants with reasonable balance? The age-old question. How do you bring in consultants and contractors into your culture?
Yes. Yeah, it's a great question. I think for me, and everybody kind of feels a little bit different about this from an HR standpoint, because some HR folks are more risk tolerant, some are less risk tolerant. For me, it's about if you are honoring what makes them a contractor, right? Like they can work for other organizations, you're not dictating their work and their hours, those things. So you're still checking all the boxes that they are clearly contractors and not FTEs or full time employees. Then it's more about how do you want them to be effective in your organization. So if helping them be effective is to offer them access to a training you already offer, maybe that makes sense because it actually will help them ramp up faster on the work that you're doing, or access to a certain system or access to a certain perk. If it's going to make them more effective, more efficient, and therefore more successful in the project they're doing for you, that might make sense as long as they continue to check all the boxes of that they're contractors and not FTEs. But you should give them feedback. You should help them feel supported in the work that they're doing while working with your organization. So that's how I kind of try to balance it, is that I never want them to feel sort of like an other because they're not an FTE. But as long as they still clearly check the boxes, I love to welcome folks, especially if they're doing what is essentially full-time work from an hour standpoint, to make them feel like they're part of the organization, because they are. They're helping you achieve your business goals.
And I always work around it where I say, this is optional. So,
Mhm.
because as contractors, they get to do their work when they need to do their work
Mhm.
and they're not being, managed by somebody. So you just come to them and say, this is optional, and make them feel that it is optional. And most contractors will be like, absolutely, I'll do it.
Yeah, and that actually ties back to the conversation we were having earlier about like bringing people together. I've seen organizations as they've had that conversation is, do we include contractors if we're bringing the team together? And to your point, they're invited, they don't have to, but if
Mhm.
you'd like to be a part of this because of the contribution you make to this organization, we're happy to have you.
So everyone, we're going to summarize a little bit here. We are going to go over a little bit, so that's okay. The reason why we kind of end here at quarter to the hour, so everybody can have a little bit of break before they get on to their next meeting. But we will go over a few minutes because I do want to summarize, and I do want to catch the last comment that came in from Van Dugra. I'm sorry, Vanna Dugra. Okay, so if you want to learn more about Progressive HR Live and Progressive HR, please go ahead and type in Progressive HR newsletter on LinkedIn, and you can go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter. The newsletter will give you all the information that you need to know on past Progressive HR Lives, what Progressive HR does, and Progressive HR Lives that are coming up. So next episode is episode 4 of our season 3, and we're going to be talking I mentioned with Megan Bickle in April about she's the culture director with Western Digital, and we're going to be talking about, again, one of my favorite other than ChatGPT is HR in the metaverse. So this is going to be a really interesting and interactive conversation. So please join us in April and bring your questions. So last, this is an essay here. So. First time I tried a risk score tool on the ChatGPT, it asked details to fill in the resume. It gave some code to ask me to upload resume. I'm not there to, oh no, don't do that. Don't. Yeah, definitely do not do that. Yeah, don't. ChatGPT is purely an interactive, you ask it questions, you ask it to produce content for you. Shouldn't have to, I mean, what you could do is you could copy and paste portions of your resume and put it into ChatGPT and ask it, please summarize, or please create this, please check spelling, or please create this in the voice of somebody working in talent acquisition, or please scan this or use these keywords in there. But yeah, you never want to upload anything that anybody needs to look over, because that's no. So do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's funny. If you're into this kind of entertainment, last week's or 2 weeks ago's episode of South Park actually did this, and they did it in a really cute way with all the little third graders texting each other in relationships and like grading papers and everything. So if you want to kind of have a fun with it, watch that episode, because it actually talks a lot about this and the tools, but also sort of the fun with it too.
Okay, that'll be interesting. We'll have to look into that.
If that's the kind of entertainment you like. I know everybody has different tastes, but
yeah, I'm not a South Park fan, but if South Park is going to get into ChatGPT and our tech tools, I think maybe I can. Okay, everyone. So we're going to end our live now. Thank you so much for showing up today and talking with us. And Karen, thank you so much for sharing your time and your talent with the Progressive HR audience. Really greatly appreciate you. And I just wanted to say to everybody out there, thank you, Resourceful Humans. And I hope we'll see you next time.
Byron.
Bye, everyone.